I spent 8 months sealing a $20 million deal, only to get fired days before the contract was signed. No warning, no explanation, just gone. They thought they could steal my commission and bury me, but they forgot one thing. I read the fine print. And what happened next? It brought an entire company to its knees. I spent nearly a year working on that deal. 11 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days to be exact. Not that I was counting, but I could probably tell you the date of every single call I had with Orion Dynamics. It was the kind of deal that could change a career. $22 million on the table, a commission worth $1.6 million. That wasn't just numbers to me, that was years of security, a down payment on the house I'd always dreamed about, and maybe finally stepping away from the non-stop hustle I'd been grinding through for over a decade. ApexCore had never landed anything even close to this size, and I was the one steering it. Every presentation, every round of negotiations, every late-night deck, I did that. And I did it well. From the start, I knew Victor Harlan was watching me. He wasn't the kind of VP who liked his team outshining him, especially not women. He had this way of smiling that made you feel like he was sharpening a knife behind his teeth. I'd seen what he did to people who got too close to winning big. Janice from East Coast Accounts fired 3 days before her $800,000 deal closed. Steve from Tech Verticals let go after he secured that global license contract. There was always some vague excuse: restructuring, redundancy, performance concerns. And every time, like clockwork, Victor quietly stepped in to take over the deal and collect the reward. A handful of people suspected it, but no one ever said anything. They were too scared. Still, I believed maybe I'd be the exception. I was smart, I played by the book, and more importantly, I documented everything. I kept a timeline of my involvement with Orion. I made sure every key email, every client conversation, every win was backed up. Not because I didn't trust Victor, I didn't, but because after years in this industry, you learn to protect yourself. That's the thing about working your way up in corporate sales as a woman in your late 30s. You stop dreaming about fair play and start learning how to survive the game. But even with all that caution, I didn't see it coming, not the way it actually went down. It was a Thursday morning, gray and drizzly, and I remember because I'd just finished updating our internal CRM with the final approval note from Orion's legal team. The dotted line was hours away from being signed. Caleb Rourke, their CEO, had already emailed me that morning confirming we were good to go. I grabbed a coffee, sat down at my desk, and took a breath the kind you take when something major is about to land. Then came the ping. Victor Harlan would like to see you in his office. No subject line, no explanation, just that cold, blunt calendar invite that told me everything I needed to know. When I walked in, he didn't even look up, just waved a hand at the chair across from him and kept tapping away on his keyboard. The air felt heavier than usual, like the oxygen had been sucked out. He finally leaned back and said, without the slightest change in tone, "Elaine, we're restructuring the sales department. Unfortunately, your role is being eliminated effective immediately." Just like that. No mention of Orion, no acknowledgement of the deal, no thank you for bringing in what would have been the biggest sale in company history. I sat there, completely still, and just asked one question. "Is this about the commission?" He smiled like I'd made a joke. "This is a business decision. You'll receive 2 weeks of severance and your benefits will continue through the end of the month." I don't know how I didn't flip that damn table. Maybe because I'd been preparing for this somewhere in the back of my mind. Or maybe because I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of watching me break. I stood up, nodded once, and said, "Got it." That was it. 10 years with the company, 4 back-to-back President's Club awards, and a pipeline that could have carried us through the next fiscal year, and it ended in a 30-second conversation and a printed packet with my exit details. I walked out without a word, past the rows of desks, past the people who kept their heads down and their mouths shut. They all knew, but no one looked up. Back home, I stared at my laptop for hours. The client folder was still open. The last message from Caleb was still glowing on the screen. "Looking forward to tomorrow's signing. Great job, Elaine." I couldn't bring myself to delete it. The rage sat in my throat like acid. But under it, something else started to stir, something sharper, quieter. I knew Victor. I knew how he operated. And I knew there was no way a company like Orion Dynamics would have signed off on a final agreement without including a clause about personnel continuity. Big clients always added that language, especially on deals involving strategic partnerships. And I remembered one line from a call 6 months earlier where Jordan Beck, their strategic accounts director, had asked, "Elaine, you'll be the ongoing lead on this, right? No substitutions?" At the time, I'd laughed and said, "You're stuck with me." I dug through my email history, pulled up the contract drafts, and there it was plain as day. Section 4.2. Should the designated lead consultant be removed or reassigned from the project without prior written approval from Orion Dynamics, the agreement shall be considered voidable at Orion's discretion. My heart was pounding. That clause wasn't just a line of legal fluff. It was leverage. It was power. It was my way back in. I opened a new tab and drafted a short, direct email to Jordan. "Hey, Jordan. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up. I'm no longer with ApexCore as of today. I assume someone else will be joining tomorrow's call, but I wanted to let you know personally." 10 minutes later, his reply came through. "Wait, what? You're not leading the handoff anymore?" I answered honestly. "No, I was terminated this morning. Not sure what the plan is now." The response came quickly. "That violates our terms. I'm pulling Caleb in now. Can we talk in 20? That was the beginning of the end for Victor, for ApexCore. And as it turned out, the beginning of something much better for me. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days after I was fired. I couldn't. The humiliation was still too raw, and I wasn't ready to see the world again. Not yet. I ignored calls from the few friends who knew what had happened. I left the television on in the background just for the noise, but I didn't watch it. Mostly, I just sat there, staring at my inbox, rereading Caleb's last email and that brutal message from Victor about my termination due to department restructuring. I kept wondering if I had missed something, if there had been a sign I should have picked up on. But then again, no amount of intuition would have stopped someone like Victor. That man had perfected the art of betrayal, and I had been stupid enough to think maybe I was different. Maybe I had earned some kind of immunity after a decade of loyalty and results. But in the end, I was just another name on his list. Another woman he didn't think twice about stepping on for his own gain. On the third morning, I pulled myself together. Not emotionally, not completely. I was still furious, but I forced myself to get up, make real coffee, and do something productive. I opened the storage bin where I kept all my archived files from old client work. Yes, I'm one of those people who saves everything, and thank God I am. My instinct had been nudging me towards something ever since I left that building, a feeling that I had more power in this situation than Victor realized. And when I finally found the printout of the original Orion proposal from 6 months ago, that instinct turned into something real. I flipped through the pages, and there it was, right under Section 4. 2. One sentence that would change everything. In the event that the assigned lead consultant is removed, reassigned, or otherwise made unavailable to the project without prior written approval from Orion Dynamics, this agreement shall be rendered void at the client's discretion. My hands started to shake. I read it again. And again. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't exaggerated. That clause was very real. And that meant ApexCore was in breach of contract the moment they fired me. The next morning, I woke up to a ping on my phone. It was an email from Jordan Beck. Just a short message asking why I hadn't been on the kickoff call with their internal stakeholders. They had expected me there, obviously. That call had been scheduled for weeks. I took a deep breath, stared at the screen for a full minute, then replied as plainly as I could. "Hi, Jordan, just to clarify, I'm no longer with ApexCore as of Thursday morning. I'm not part of the implementation phase." It felt strange, almost surreal, to write that out, like I was admitting something that still didn't feel entirely real. But the moment I hit send, I knew I'd dropped a live grenade into the middle of Victor's empire. Jordan replied within 10 minutes. "Wait, what? What do you mean you're not with them? You're the lead on this. Who's handling the transition?" I didn't sugarcoat anything. 2 hours later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Caleb Rourke himself. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. His voice was tight, clipped, professional, but pissed. "Elaine, We've reviewed the agreement and confirmed there's a clause protecting the continuity of leadership on this project. Your termination violates that clause. We're formally canceling the deal with ApexCore. I was silent for a second. I wasn't sure whether to feel vindicated or terrified. Understood, I finally said. Caleb exhaled slowly and added, "You were the reason we signed in the first place. Losing you changed everything." Then he hung up. Just like that, the $22 million deal disappeared from ApexCore's pipeline. And that was only the beginning. Within hours, word spread inside ApexCore. I wasn't there to witness it, but the flurry of views on my LinkedIn profile told me everything I needed to know. Someone from HR looked me up, then someone from legal. Even Gavin Stone, the CEO, viewed my profile twice in one afternoon. I knew exactly what they were doing, trying to figure out what I'd done, how I had triggered a cancellation that big, and more importantly, how they were going to explain it to the board. I started getting emails again, this time from people who hadn't spoken to me in months. One of them was Tara Kim, a former colleague who'd always walked the tightrope between friendly and opportunistic. "Hey, Elaine. Just wanted to check in. Things are kind of crazy here right now. Would love to catch up." I didn't respond. Later that day, someone from a blocked number left a voicemail. I didn't even need to listen to the whole thing. It was a painfully transparent attempt to get me to agree to a temporary consulting contract to assist with the Orion transition. They were panicking. They didn't have a backup plan, no continuity, no one with enough trust from Orion to salvage what I had built. It was laughable. Victor had thought he could cut me out and keep the prize. But he hadn't counted on the fact that some clients actually read contracts and respected relationships. This wasn't just a win for me. This was a message. You can't build a career on deceit and expect people to follow you when the truth catches up. That night, I opened a new notebook, the good leather-bound one I'd been saving for something important, and I started sketching out the framework of a new company. I wasn't entirely sure where it would lead, but I knew I wasn't going back to the old world. I'd seen too much. I'd learned too much. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to fit back into the system. I wanted to build my own, something leaner, sharper, and rooted in actual ethics. I named it Arrow Point Strategies. It was a placeholder at first, but the name stuck. I set up an LLC by the next afternoon and quietly started planning my next move. No announcements, no social media updates, just quiet execution. The following morning, I sent a personal email to Caleb. I thanked him for the opportunity and apologized for how things had played out. Then, I asked if he would be open to a short call to discuss a possible future collaboration. He replied within an hour. "Absolutely. I'd prefer to work with people I trust." That sentence gave me more energy than coffee ever could. We scheduled the call for Friday. I wasn't sure what the outcome would be, but I knew one thing. I was walking into that conversation as my own boss. Not as someone begging for a rollback, but as a professional offering value on my own terms. In the meantime, ApexCore tried to get ahead of the story. They issued a short, vague statement to internal stakeholders, saying Orion had adjusted their strategic focus and chosen to delay their integration timeline. It was a pathetic attempt to mask what had really happened, but the problem with lies is that they're slippery. Someone always finds the cracks. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one covering them up. I stayed silent publicly, said nothing to the media, didn't even comment on LinkedIn posts. I didn't need to. The truth was already working its way out. One by one, the dominoes were falling, and I was just getting started. The news traveled fast inside ApexCore. Not even 24 hours had passed since Orion pulled the plug, and already the place was imploding. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I could feel the chaos through the digital whispers. LinkedIn views piling up from managers who had ignored me a week earlier. Vague comments on industry posts. Even a couple of cold outreach messages from ApexCore's competitors asking if I was open to freelance engagements. But the real confirmation came from a text I wasn't expecting. It was from Tara Kim. Just one line. "What the hell did you do?" I stared at it for a minute before tossing my phone onto the couch. That panic wasn't for my sake. It was because the foundation they'd all stood on just cracked underneath them, and they knew it. About an hour later, Tara texted again. This time, she included some juicy details. Gavin, the CEO, had apparently lost it during a senior leadership call. The CFO was furious and had asked for a timeline breakdown of the Orion deal, specifically when I had been removed, and who had signed off on the decision. That told me all I needed to know. They were scrambling for cover, desperate to trace the damage back to someone else. Victor was probably sweating through his overpriced suit, trying to spin it like it had been a misunderstanding or some necessary restructuring. But the numbers didn't lie. $22 million had just vanished. And the person he tried to erase from the picture was the one now holding the pen. That afternoon, I got a call from a number I hadn't saved, but I recognized the area code. ApexCore's HR. I let it ring, then a voicemail. Hi, Elaine. This is Marcy from HR. We were wondering if you'd be available for a short-term consulting engagement related to the Orion transition. We'd really value your expertise during this time. I almost laughed. Just a few days ago, I was redundant. Now I was suddenly essential again, but I didn't call back. I didn't email. I didn't even acknowledge the message. My silence was the answer. They had made their choice, and now they had to live with it. I wasn't going to be the one patching up their mess, not again. Instead, I poured all my focus into building something new, something mine. I spent the next 2 days refining the basic framework I had jotted into my notebook. ArrowPoint strategies. It was sleek, simple, and most importantly, it felt right. I registered the LLC, bought the domain, and worked with a freelance designer I'd known for years to mock up a clean, modern brand identity. No fluff. No corporate bloat, just clarity, strategy, and relationships. I wasn't interested in becoming the next bloated consultancy chasing Fortune 500 contracts. I wanted agility. I wanted integrity. And I wanted to work only with clients who respected that. Once the infrastructure was in place, I sent a short, direct email to Caleb Rourke. Hi, Caleb. I've officially launched my own firm, ArrowPoint Strategies. If you're still looking for implementation support, I'd love to discuss how we can continue the work directly and more transparently. I believe we can rebuild something better this way. His reply came the same day. Let's talk tomorrow. No drama, no delay, just mutual respect and a shared vision for what could come next. We scheduled a Zoom call for the following afternoon. I set up a clean background, put on a navy blazer, and opened the meeting as the founder of my own company. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Caleb was sharp and focused, but also noticeably more relaxed than when we'd spoken before. I'll be honest, he said, this might actually work better for us. Less red tape, fewer delays, and frankly, you're the only one we trusted on that team anyway. I smiled, but I didn't let the moment make me soft. I'm ready to move forward, I told him, but on a clean slate. I'll draft a new agreement. It'll reflect my current capacity and approach. Caleb nodded. Make sure you include what you need to make it sustainable. We're not here to squeeze anyone. That was it. A completely different tone from the power plays and control tactics I was used to at ApexCore. This wasn't about leverage, it was about value. Over the next few days, I worked on the proposal like my life depended on it. Because in many ways, it did. This wasn't just a second chance. It was a test of whether I could stand on my own 2 feet, outside the comfort of a corporate umbrella. I stripped away the jargon and focused on what mattered. Implementation timelines, stakeholder engagement, risk mitigation, and value-driven KPIs. I also included something I never would have had the courage to before, a clause that explicitly protected my role in the project. If ArrowPoint was removed without cause, the agreement would be terminated immediately. Clean, professional, mutual accountability. Caleb reviewed it with his internal counsel and signed within a week. The moment the contract was executed, I felt a shift, not just externally, but in me. It was like shedding a skin I didn't even realize I'd been wearing. I was no longer a cog in someone else's machine. I was the one building the gears now. ArrowPoint had its first official client, and not just any client, but one that had chosen me over a massive, decades-old firm. I moved fast. I onboarded a virtual assistant, signed up for a client management platform, and started mapping out the first 90 days of delivery. Every step I took made it more real, more grounded. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was a founder. Meanwhile, ApexCore continued spiraling. Word got around. Another client delayed their renewal. A promising new lead suddenly went dark. And then came the whispers someone had leaked details about the Orion cancellation to an industry newsletter. They didn't name names, but anyone paying attention could read between the lines. Major consulting firm loses multi-million-dollar deal after abrupt personnel change, was all the headline said. But the implication was clear. People started asking questions, people started talking, and every conversation that didn't include ApexCore included me. I didn't gloat, I didn't engage, I didn't need to. The universe had already shifted. Then came the kicker. An anonymous Glassdoor review popped up, clearly written by someone inside. It was scathing. Toxic leadership, zero respect for talent, and decisions made purely out of ego. We lost a $20 million deal because someone got jealous. It didn't say my name. It didn't have to. The timing made it obvious. Within hours, it was the most upvoted review on their page. And for a company that had always tried to market itself as visionary and people first, the fallout was brutal. They tried to respond, of course. The usual corporate nonsense. We're reviewing internal processes. We remain committed to our clients, and so on. But the damage was already done. Their credibility was cracking. One night, about a week after I signed with Orion, I got another call. It was Victor. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened, it was the most restrained I'd ever heard him. Elaine, I think we both know how this has spiraled. I'm not calling to fight. I just want to talk. Maybe clear the air. Maybe figure out if there's a path forward here. I didn't respond. I didn't need closure. I needed distance. And I already had everything I'd spent years waiting for: autonomy, clarity, respect. All he had left were excuses. I wasn't going to waste my time being a therapist to a man who thought I was expendable. The last thing I did that week was order a small engraved sign for my desk. Just something simple, clean. Elaine Morgan, founder, ArrowPoint Strategies. It wasn't about showing off. It was about grounding myself, a reminder that I had built something from ashes, that I had faced the fire, stood in the wreckage, and made something better. For the first time in years, I didn't dread Mondays. I didn't feel the weight of someone else's ego on my back. I was building at my own pace, for the right reasons, with the right people. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. The moment the press release went live, I knew the game had changed. Orion published it on a Tuesday morning, straightforward, professionally worded, but packed with undertones that couldn't be ignored. Orion Systems is proud to announce its strategic partnership with ArrowPoint Strategies, led by Elaine Morgan, whose commitment to transparency, operational excellence, and ethical leadership has shaped this collaboration. That sentence hit harder than any headline ApexCore had managed to buy. It wasn't just a new business announcement, it was a public declaration that I was the one they trusted. And ApexCore had been cut out entirely. I didn't ask them to mention me by name. They did it because they wanted to. And it landed like a hammer. Within hours, LinkedIn lit up. Likes, shares, quiet DMs from old colleagues, even a couple of congratulatory emails from people I hadn't spoken to since my early career. Some were sincere, others just curious, and a few were flat out opportunistic, but none of that mattered. What mattered was how fast the ripple effect started to show. That same day, I noticed ApexCore's head of enterprise sales updated her profile to open to work. 2 days later, another mid-level consultant posted a vague message about navigating change and staying resilient. Then came the real blow. A client I'd once handled under ApexCore posted on their company page that they were reevaluating external vendor relationships in light of recent developments. It didn't name names, but it didn't have to. Then came the storm. That anonymous Glassdoor post was still up, and now it was climbing. Executive leadership lacks integrity, culture of fear, saw firsthand how a senior leader sabotaged talent to protect his own interests. The firm recently lost a flagship client due to ego and mismanagement. It wasn't subtle and it wasn't fake. Comments beneath it started appearing from other anonymous employees, corroborating the environment. Words like toxic, political, and short-sighted were repeated again and again, and the timing wasn't lost on anyone. Clients started digging. prospects started pausing. ApexCore's once polished image had cracked, and now the rot inside was visible to everyone. Meanwhile, I kept my head down and worked. I wasn't trying to gloat. I wasn't watching the wreckage for pleasure. I had clients to serve and a new reputation to build. Arrow Point wasn't just a lifeboat. It was the vessel I'd been meant to sail all along. Every email I sent had my new signature at the bottom. Every call began with, "Thank you for trusting us." And every task I completed felt like a step forward in a direction I had chosen. No politics, no office drama, just results. Clean, effective, impactful results. Orion moved fast and I matched their pace. Weekly check-ins turned into daily syncs. They looped me into cross-functional planning meetings, invited me to internal strategy sessions, and even asked for my input on organizational change beyond the scope of the original project. It wasn't long before other companies started to take notice. A former client of mine at ApexCore reached out through my website. Saw the Orion news, would love to catch up and hear more about ArrowPoint. That turned into a lunch meeting, which turned into a follow-up call, which turned into a proposal request. The irony was impossible to ignore. The very clients ApexCore had assumed would never leave were suddenly knocking on my door asking for partnership. And this time, I didn't have to play by anyone else's rules. My proposals were tailored, my pricing was clear, and my value was front and center. I wasn't asking for permission anymore. I was setting the tone. Victor, on the other hand, was losing control. From what I heard through the grapevine, his grip on the leadership team was slipping. Board members had started asking questions. Investors were getting twitchy. One of the junior partners who'd always been his loyal defender reportedly skipped a leadership summit and canceled a speaking engagement with no explanation. Internally, they were trying to spin the Orion loss as a mutual decision, but no one was buying it. The fact that Orion had gone out of their way to publicly align with ArrowPoint made that impossible. Everyone could read between the lines. Victor had made a reckless call, and it had backfired in the most humiliating way possible. About a week later, I got an email from an industry newsletter asking for a comment. "We're running a piece on the rise of boutique consultancies and would love to feature ArrowPoint as an example of the shift away from bloated legacy firms. Would you be open to a brief interview?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stay quiet, keep building, and avoid the spotlight. But another part of me, the part that had been overlooked, dismissed, and erased, knew this was bigger than just me. This was about the countless other people who'd been told they were too quiet, too direct, too different to lead. I replied, "Happy to chat. Let me know a good time." The interview went live a few days later. It was balanced, thoughtful, and didn't dwell on the ApexCore drama. It focused on what I was building, how the consulting landscape was shifting, and why clients were leaning toward authenticity over bureaucracy. The response was overwhelming. New visitors flooded my website. I got dozens of inquiries through the contact form. One company even emailed saying, "We've been looking for someone exactly like you. Can we talk this week?" It was surreal. Just weeks earlier, I had been sitting alone in my apartment with a cardboard box of belongings from a job I didn't quit. Now I was fielding interviews as the founder of a company that people actually wanted to work with. Through it all, I stayed grounded. I didn't hire too fast. I didn't scale recklessly. I brought on one part-time project manager to help with client coordination and started vetting contract consultants I could call on when needed. I kept the team lean and the mission clear. ArrowPoint wasn't about empire building. It was about doing great work and being treated with respect. Every contract we signed included the same clause I'd used with Orion, the one that protected the integrity of the relationship. If we were removed without cause, the agreement was void, no exceptions. I wasn't going to let anyone pull the rug out from under me again. Not now, not ever. And then, just when I thought the dust had settled, something unexpected happened. A junior associate from ApexCore messaged me on LinkedIn. We'd barely spoken when I was there, but he sent a long note thanking me. He said he'd watched what happened from the sidelines, and it had inspired him to quit and pursue a more ethical company. Seeing someone stand up and walk away with dignity changed how I see this business. Thank you. That message stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't about revenge or validation. It was about impact. Quiet impact. The kind that doesn't trend or go viral but sits with someone and changes how they move through the world. That meant more to me than any headline ever could. A few days later, I ran into Tara at a networking event. She looked tired, like someone who had stayed too long at a party she didn't want to attend in the first place. We made eye contact across the room, and after a moment, she walked over. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I should have spoken up. I knew what they were doing wasn't right, but I was scared." I nodded. "I get it," I told her. "Fear keeps a lot of people quiet. It kept me quiet for too long." She looked relieved, maybe even a little emotional. "I'm leaving soon," she admitted. "This whole thing, it's not sustainable anymore." I wished her luck. I meant it. That night, I walked back to my apartment feeling light. Everything was clearer now. I didn't need everyone to believe in me. I just needed to believe in myself. And I had done that even when everything fell apart. ApexCore had collapsed under its own weight, and I had climbed out from under the rubble without looking back. Arrow Point was still small, still new, but it was real, and it was mine. Every win felt earned. Every decision felt deliberate, and every day I got to wake up and do work that actually mattered, with people who respected me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. The email came late on a Thursday. Subject line: request for discussion, board inquiry. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there for a few hours, untouched, unread, while I finished reviewing a client deck and took a quiet moment to make tea. When I finally did click it open, I saw exactly what I expected. The board at ApexCore wanted to speak with me. Not in a confrontational way, not legal, not even desperate. Just careful, measured, like people who knew a storm had rolled through, and they were finally ready to ask where the lightning came from. I said yes, but on my terms. The meeting would happen virtually, after business hours, and I would not be recorded. I also made it clear I wouldn't be entertaining any offers, reconciliations, or vague apologies. They agreed. And a few days later, I logged into the call, camera on, blouse pressed, voice steady. There were 6 of them on the other side, board members, people I'd only met in passing over the years. Their expressions were polite, but I could feel the tension in the silence before anyone spoke. They asked how I was doing. I said I was doing well, thank you, and that Arrow Point Strategies had been growing steadily. I didn't gloat. I didn't flex. I just answered clearly, like a woman who'd survived something and no longer had time for pretense. Then came the real reason for the meeting, Victor. They'd launched a formal internal investigation. HR had provided documentation. Several employees had come forward, and they wanted to hear from me firsthand how my departure had impacted the Orion deal. I told them everything, not just about the clause in the contract or the fact that Victor had fired me days before finalizing a $20 million agreement. I told them about the culture, the whispers, the way sales leaders were quietly pushed out just before bonuses cleared. I told them about the chilling silence I got from my team after I was terminated. I told them what it was like to build trust with a client over months, only to be cut off at the knees because a man in a corner office thought he was untouchable. I didn't cry, I didn't curse, I didn't dramatize. I just laid it out, brick by brick. Their faces barely moved, but I could tell the weight of what I said landed hard. When I was done, there was a pause just long enough to feel honest, and then someone said, "Thank you for your candor, Ms. Morgan. That was illuminating." I nodded, gave them a half smile, and said, "I hope it was useful." Then I logged off. I didn't wait for their closing remarks. I had other things to do. 3 days later, Victor resigned. No big press release, no fond farewell email from him to the team, no announcement on LinkedIn, just gone. Like he was never there. I wasn't surprised. A man like Victor doesn't take responsibility, he takes exits. But what I didn't expect was what came next. Late one night, around 10:15 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. It was Victor. His voice low, almost unrecognizable. "Elaine," he started, "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I want to talk. I've been doing some thinking. A lot of thinking. I messed up. Bad. And I'm sorry. I'd like a chance to make things right, if that's even possible." I played the message twice. Then a third time, just to make sure I wasn't imagining the tone in his voice. Deflated, uncertain, humbled. And maybe he really was sorry. Maybe he finally saw what his greed had cost him. But forgiveness? That was not his to demand. I called him back the next morning. Calm, collected, professional. "Victor," I said, "if you really want to make things right, you can start by wiring the commission you stole from me. $1.4 million. I think you remember the number." He stammered something about not having access to those funds anymore. Something about legal barriers. I didn't care. I let him talk himself into a corner. Then I said, "I'm not here for explanations. I'm not here for closure. You asked how to make it right. That's your answer." And I hung up. I haven't heard from him since. But the timing was poetic. Because that very afternoon, I signed the new contract with Orion, my contract. Not as a consultant, not as a junior partner. As founder and CEO of ArrowPoint Strategies. The paperwork was clean, the numbers were better, and the terms were airtight. No more corporate games, no more sudden firings, and absolutely no clause that could push me out of my own deal. This time, everything was on my terms. Jordan Beck from Orion came by my new office for the signing. He shook my hand, smiled wide, and said, "You know, Elaine, we always knew it was you. You were the reason we came to the table in the first place." I thanked him, but I didn't say more. I was saving that moment, holding it in my chest like a victory stone. After he left, I sat at my desk for a while, just breathing, just existing. My name was on the door. My team, small but mighty, was down the hall. And the contract that had almost broken me was now the very thing that crowned my comeback. Word traveled fast. ApexCore issued a weak, vague press statement about leadership transitions and operational recalibrations. It fooled no one. The industry knew, the clients knew, and thanks to that anonymous Glassdoor post that had gone viral weeks earlier, the public knew too. But I didn't chase the headlines. I didn't go on a media tour. I didn't even like the post on LinkedIn when someone tagged me in it. I just kept working, kept building, kept thriving. Because revenge doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes the sweetest justice is in the quiet, in the deals signed behind closed doors, in the calm voice that no longer trembles, in the confidence of knowing you were right all along and now no one can take it from you. Not again. And that's how I took back everything they tried to steal from me, my name, my work, my worth, all of it. Not through rage, not through scandal, but through clarity, strategy, and the kind of patience only experience can teach you. Victor tried to end my career with a signature. I rebuilt it with one. But this time, the pen was in my hand.